that'll be familiar to you, I think. It's called the Jesus Prayer. Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on us. Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on us. Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on us. Well, that's a sweet way to open. Oh, hello there, Krishna Kali. So, namaste, dear.
Namaste, Brother Shankara.
So, Jeffrey, would you like to open by reading this poem, Our Beauty?
Oh, I would love to. Our beauty. Live with dignity, women. Live with dignity, men. Few things will more enhance our beauty as much. Our beauty. Live with dignity, women. Live with dignity, men. Few things will more enhance our beauty as much.
Anyone have anything to say about this lovely admonition?
I think it's lovely that, no surprise, since it's written by a woman, that she addresses the women first before the men.
I think that's absolutely true, and it's very appropriate for this time in the world, which I think is one of the reasons that the interpreter did it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I opened with the Jesus prayer for a reason. That prayer contains two words that are called in Sanskrit bija, or seed words. One is the name Christ itself, or Christos. The other is the word mercy, which, if you repeat the Jesus prayer, will begin to expand and expand and expand. We have this idea about the word mercy, but there's so much more contained within that seed. And the same thing is true of dignity, I believe. The dignity is also a seed word. It's very profound. In Bhagavad Gita, there is a definition of something called sthita prajna. And it is a definition, if you will, of dignity. Dignity in this expanding sense. Dignity, of course, means poise and grace. But it means poise and grace in any situation, so that you're not reactive in a way that an ordinary person would be, a dignified person. So this, I think, is a very profound poem in that sense. If you truly are dignified, if you live with dignity, you're going to be centered in a way. If you really can live with dignity, you're going to be centered in a way that really will enhance your beauty. I love her use of the word beauty. So anyway, that's my little sermonette about this poem.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
I think it is all the more remarkable knowing the background from which Rabia, realized she was the embodiment of dignity. Without dignity, she could not have, done all the things that she did and becomes saint.
I agree entirely, dear, particularly with the word embodiment. One cannot write something like this and have it last through the centuries with the impact that it does, unless one is the embodiment of that. So I agree entirely. Thank you.
And the fact that she is talking here about inner beauty, whereas so much of her life was involved with the outer beauty, right?
Yes, exactly.
So I like that as well.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, she's not talking about adornments. She's not talking about clothing. She's not talking about, I mean, if you're dignified, if you have that dignity within, you won't have to practice walking with a book on your head. it will,
I think
yes,
with the word dignity too, the way you were talking about poise and grace, it makes me think of somebody with presence.
yes,
You know, they have a certain presence to them, right? A stillness, but that it is arresting, or you notice, right? And that can be quite beautiful when we see somebody that is
yes,
so present, you know, regardless of their adornments, right? But sometimes you just see somebody and they look so peaceful because they're so present, right? You know, I
yes,
think we've also, that's a word that came to mind when you said poise and grace. I thought of somebody with presence, right? Or the presence, or
yes,
you know, there's, you could.
exactly. As I was thinking about this poem before class, uh, the person that came to mind was Eleanor Roosevelt.
Mm.
Eleanor Roosevelt was not a beautiful woman. She was, in my grandmother's terms, she was plain. Uh, but such, and Jeffrey used the word presence. Yes, she had such presence. Uh, and I remember seeing films of the inauguration, the launching of the United Nations, in which she played such a part. And it's just as Jeffrey said, when she came into the room, or when the camera came on her, there was this presence and there was this beauty that was quite beyond any physical attributes she had or lacked. Anything else from anyone about this lovely little, as I said, admonition? Ah, Jeffrey, you used the word stillness, and it's in this. It's in the title of the next poem. Ladinsky, as has been remarked, so often has a very clear through line from one poem to the next. Swayam, would you care to read this one for us?
Sure, I'd love to. The perfect stillness. Love is the perfect stillness and the greatest excitement and most profound act, and the word almost as complete as his name. The perfect stillness. Love is the perfect stillness and the greatest excitement and most profound act, and the word almost as complete as his name.
So she first presents us with the duality, stillness, excitement. And then act. You know, stillness and excitement are something we feel inside. But then act, the action. Love is not just something inside. Love is an action, the most profound act. And I think this can be taken in its full spectrum of meaning as act. As Saint Francis of Assisi said, true love and compassion can only come from your eyes and lips when you too admit you are capable of any act. Well, this is on the positive side of that spectrum, but it's a wide, a great wide spectrum.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
so there are statements such as God is love and things like that. I wonder why she uses almost as complete as his name.
I wondered that too.
The only thing that I can think, Swayam, in response to your question is that love is something within time, space, and causation. The word and its meaning is something of our mind, but the name is something beyond. Of course, in Islam, Allah, the One. It doesn't have any literal meaning. But it has infinite connotation. So that's all I can think in response. I'm not saying I'm right, as always, with regard to these poems. Does anyone else have anything to say about why she would say almost as complete?
I think it's interesting his line break too. He has love is. I circled the word is. You know, I thought love is what it, you know, we hear a lot the I am that, I am this isness, this life that is here, this presence that we can't really put a, I mean, we could put a name on it, but the name isn't what it is. We could call it awareness, love, God, Allah, the, you know, Buddha, but the name is not is not this, you know, like a menu, a menu is not the meal.
Right.
I could look at the word apple, but when you eat an apple, you know, what is that? It's infinite, right? It's taste. It's like, it's mysterious. I mean, I don't know what an apple really, we could name it. We could say, oh, this is an apple. And that limits it, right? That just makes it, the mind's happy with that. The mind likes, oh, apple, got it, check. And then we experience apple through our thoughts about the apple, our description of the apple. We experience life most of the time through our descriptions of it. And this is saying, this isness that is not only perfectly still, but excitement, acting. This is like movement, but it's still, even with all this excitement and all this action, love is the perfect stillness that is, in my interpretation, allowing this all to take place, you know? And this poem is pointing to it, but this poem is not it either, you know?
Yes.
Beyond the whatever we could say about it. And that's the fun of it too, really. You know, we can paint it a million different ways, but it's all well, they say the finger pointing to the moon.
Haha, thank you, Jeffrey. Yes.
Mhm.
And I really like your the opening sentence that you circled the word is and commenting on his line break. Love is. And then he goes on with with his interpretation of her poetic description. Whether she actually wrote it that way, she well may have. She well may have had that same line break, but certainly he does. And I really like your insight as to why he did it.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
also I think Jeffrey's explanation answered my question perfectly. So basically, it's turning that almost as complete as his name upside, down. This is just like love is, God is. So even his name is only not. It's only almost as complete.
Yes.
If so, Sachidanand is isness. So that kind of ties the two together very well.
I think so too. I really liked what Jeffrey said. Anything else?
I liked the fact they said that love is the perfect stillness. And that is so well put. I mean, that's the best definition of, can you hear me?
Yes, of course.
So that is, I think, the most beautiful definition of love I've heard so far. The perfect stillness. Why stillness? Because till you get the love, you're constantly seeking. Your mind is active, it's agitated. Your eyes are always seeking. Your mind is seeking. So there's agitation and a feeling of unrest. It's when you find the object of your love, it's like everything stops and moment becomes still, and you seem to suddenly get a taste of that Anandamaya Kosha. And obviously, the perfect love is the love of unfiltered love of God. And once you've arrived home, you get the feeling of arriving home when you find the object of your love. So that perfect stillness is almost like, when Rajasic, Tamasic, and Sattvic is all in perfect balance.
Ah, ah. In which case there is perfect stillness and no manifestation. Well, Jeffrey, are you familiar with the term Anandamaya Kosha?
No, I'm not.
Okay. The one description of this stardust spacesuit that we wear is that it is made of 5 coverings. I won't go through the other 4, but the innermost covering, the one that covers the shining being that we are, is called the Anandamaya Kosha. Ananda means bliss or love, and Maya means manifestation, the manifestation. So the shining being that is at the center of our being, center of our presence, as you so beautifully used the word before, at the center of our presence, is not within time, space, and causation. It's eternal, infinite, changeless. But its first reflection within us is this ananda, bliss, love. And the word Maya, Ananda Maya, means manifest. And Kosha means covering or sheath.
That's beautiful.
It is, yes. The description of the 5 koshas, if you want to look that up just for your entertainment and edification, the word is spelled Kosha. And if you use a search engine and look up the 5 koshas, it's an interesting exercise and description of the human being.
Oh, and thank you for that.
Well, thank Krishna Kali for that.
Oh, thank you, Krishna. Very much.
Thank you.
And she's right. The perfect stillness would be the absence of manifestation. The gunas, that which create or manifest what is experienceable, and if they're in perfect equilibrium or perfect stillness, then there is that oneness without a second. Jillian, would you like to read The Way It Goes?
Yes, gladly. The way it goes. Why think God has not touched everything that comes to your desk? True, he may have kept the best for himself. That is just the way it goes.
I just love her sense of humor.
The way it goes. Why think God has not touched everything that comes to your desk? True, he may have kept the best for himself. That is just the way it goes.
I just, every time I read this, I just love and again, as Jeffrey points out, the line breaks that Ladinsky uses is very much a part of his interpretation. And the last word is all by itself. That's the way it goes.
Well, and it's such a tease too, because based on the first stanza, you would think, okay, why think God has not touched everything that comes to your desk? So, you know, God has touched everything and he's going to bless it all and your life is going to be hunky-dory. But that's not what he says, right? He says he may have touched it, but, you know, it's not all yours.
Ah, yes, indeed. As a matter of fact, if we let our hearts rest on it for a few moments, we'll understand that none of it is ours. How can it possibly be? Because the thing that seems to own anything is also going to go. That's the way it goes. That's why having these lovely fur persons with us is so poignant.
Yes, my fur person keeps walking back and forth.
Well, they bring to our attention the fact that this manifestation business is a short-term thing.
That's very true.
Anyone else have anything to say about this very funny little poem?
I have a feeling the poetess was trying to say that not everything that comes on our desks is touched by him. Is that what the sentence was? Can you read me the sentence one more time?
Why think God has not touched everything that comes to your desk?
Why do you think that the God hasn't touched everything? Because everything of this material plane is mundane, and he hasn't touched it because we haven't reached out beyond this plane, and what he's kept to himself is the joy of samadhi, which will not be anything that comes across in your desk in this plane. You have to go beyond to him, where he's kept the best for himself, which is a samadhi stage where you merge in with the divinity. So whatever lands on your desk will not give you that much pleasure, that much joy. The best he's kept to himself, which is he himself.
Very nicely put, Krishna Kali.
I think it's interesting too. Excuse me, Brother Shankar.
No, please, Jeffrey.
He says, why think God has not touched every, you know, it's when it's in our thoughts that we start to separate, right? We start to label and say, well, not this, well, the tape, but not the stapler. Paper clips, oh, but not these tacks are too pointy. You know, and so I think he has touched. I mean, what hasn't he touched? You know, so I think, you know, if I think of it in terms of presence, like what are we not present to? Our presence is present to everything. Without our presence, we wouldn't know what desk is or anything, or what anything. And to me, that's the best, and that's the best for himself. But it's also not, if there's no separation, then the best for himself is also the best for us, which to me is speaking to this presence of being here now, right? And that this is the way it goes, right? We're present, and that pervades everything. It's absolute. It's the perfect stillness, you know, no matter what's on the desk.
I really like the way you hear these poems, Jeffrey. And yes, that everything you said really rings. And what Krishna Kali said as well. You know, she mentioned the word samadhi, which is, you know, there are two levels of samadhi. And of course, it's said that there are thousands of levels of samadhi, but they can be generalized into those that are still within time, space, and causation. And in other words, there's still an experience, an experiencer, and that which is experienced, which is what is pointed to in the phrase, the peace that passeth all understanding, is the higher form of that, which is there is no experiencer, there is no understander there. And that's the highest form of the Sanskrit term is samadhi, or in the terms that the Catholics use tend to be ecstasy. So,
Brother Shankara,
yes, dear.
I have one more sort of intriguing thought.
Please.
One is the middle sentence or middle paragraph, whatever it is, begins with true. And then she or he uses the word, he may have kept the best for himself.
Yes.
Why may? I mean, doesn't say that he kept the best for himself. He may have kept the best for himself. That means he has shared it with us. So he has such everything that has come to our desk.
Well, I think that's yes. You're just coming at what Jeffrey said from a different direction. Exactly. Exactly. And I think the goes at the end is very much a pun. That's the way it happens, and that's the way it goes. So beautifully remarked, all of you. Oh my goodness. This next one. Jeffrey, we're back around to you. Oh, Krishna Kali, do you have the book?
I don't have the book, Brother Shankara.
Okay. All right. I was just going to ask you if you did. I didn't think so because you asked us to read that before, but I just wanted to make sure. Jeffrey, then we're back around to you.
Sure.
Die before you die.
Okay, die before you die. Ironic, but one of the most intimate acts of our body is death. So beautiful appeared my death, knowing who then I would kiss. I died 1,000 times before I died. Die before you die, said the Prophet Muhammad. Have wings that feared ever touched the sun? I was born when all I once feared I could love. Die before you die. Ironic, but one of the most intimate acts of our body is death. So beautiful appeared my death, knowing who then I would kiss. I died 1,000 times before I died. Die before you die, said the Prophet Muhammad. Have wings that feared ever touched the sun? I was born when all I once feared I could love.
This may be one of the more profound poems in the book.
And there is so much in this one poem,
Yes.
Shankara.
Oh, exactly.
So much.
So much.
So the things that come up for me is the French Le Petit Mort, which is the French for an orgasm. And I feel that again, looking at knowing her background, I'm wondering if then she is celebrating the beauty of intimate love. I died 1,000 times before I died. And then who then would I kiss? That seemed to kind of all come in this very sensual reference. And then, but then she says, die before you die, said the Prophet Muhammad. So she's taking it, she's elevating it right away to a religious figure. And then she's saying, have wings that feared ever touch the sun. So I'm thinking there of Icarus, right? Who flew up to
capital S sun also. Notice capital S.
And capital S sun, right? Right. So sun being also God, or the ultimate, the infinite. And then she goes from death to being born, which to me brings to mind Christians who are born again in their faith, right? It's the old person died, the old person dies, not old in age, but old in faith, dies, and born again when all that I once feared I could love. Yeah, I think there are so many allusions here for me. I don't know if he meant all of them.
Well, he wouldn't care whether he meant all of them. If you heard them, you heard them.
I did hear them definitely in this, yes.
And so this business about the Prophet Muhammad, the die before you die, is this spiritual rebirth. And the lines that go on from this in the Quran point to this. And for that matter, the lines that lead up to it. But it is this, so beautiful appeared my death, knowing who then I would kiss. And of course, as you point out, the kiss that has more meaning than just, an osculation. I died 1,000 times before I died. In other words, this was why her death appeared so beautiful to her. So beautiful appeared my death. So yes, there's much here. What does anyone else hear?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
Couple of things. One is, I may be paraphrasing here a bit, but I think I once heard Sadhguru mention something like, it's only when you have overcome the fear of death can you actually begin living. Mm-hmm. And the other one is, this poem reminds me of that verse from Swamiji's Song of the Sannyasin. If I may read it.
Please.
Heed then no more how body lives or goes. Its task is done. Let karma float it down. Let one put garlands on, another kick this frame. say not. No praise or blame can be where praiser praised and blamer blamed are one. Thus be thou calm, sannyasin bold, say Om Tat Sat Om.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful reference to Swami Vivekananda's work, and I think very relevant. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think with the die before you die, it makes me think of what you hear in a lot of non-duality text is centered around the death of the personal self or the ego.
Mm-hmm.
This idea of being, separate away from, yeah, that kind of separate person that's clinging to something or trying to get somewhere or trying to find God or to get away from their the past, the thing that's striving,
Mm-hmm.
that's trying to achieve something, get somewhere, hold on to something. The sort of thought create itself. All our stories that we have about, if you could, not that you don't have to be a person that you would be vapid or like a zombie or something, but you can see through the stories a little bit. And there's a real surrender once you can drop some, or see through some of that stuff. There's a real surrender before your final surrender. If you're already surrendered, when it's time to let go, well, you've been letting go, since the moment you were kissed, and it made me think of that initial kiss that never left her.
Mm-hmm.
From the very first poem, one day he did not leave after kissing me.
Ah,
So knowing who then I would kiss,
beautiful.
it made me think of that as well. But this idea of fear too, fear, what is fear, right? Fear is usually we're afraid something's going to happen in the future,
Right.
Or we had something happen to us in the past and we're afraid it's gonna, you're kind of in the past, in the future. And once I was born, when all I once feared, all those things that I feared of the future, of the past, once those fell away, she was born and could love and was born in afresh,
Yes. As Mark Twain remarked, in my life, 1,000 terrible things have occurred to me, most of which never happened.
Right.
So true.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right, Jeffrey. If you're outside the moment, in the moment, there's almost never anything to fear in the moment. Sometimes there is, but most of the time not.
Mm-hmm.
And this have wings that feared ever touched the sun. You were bringing up non-dualism, Jeffrey. Within non-dualism, the more extreme texts talk about annihilating the mind. That is the very word they use, annihilating. In other words, simply burning it in the fire of self-surrender. And that's also the words that they attach to it is burning as you would burn straw in a fire. And one of the great Advaitists, Adi Shankaracharya, said, describing or trying to describe his death before his death, said, my mind fell like a hailstone. My mind fell like a hailstone into the ocean of consciousness and therein dissolved. And it is a very interesting metaphor to use hailstone. If you've ever cut a hailstone in half, you'll see the truth of what is said by meteorologists about a hailstone. It is not a uniform lump of ice. It is layer after layer after layer of ice formed around a minute seed of dust or some particulate. And layer after layer after layer builds up. So I don't think it's any accident that Adi Shankaracharya used the word hailstone. He was far too great a debater to use a word carelessly. So the mind is made up of many layers, and all these things that may be feared, or may be part of the fear. Anyway, as was pointed out when this poem was first read, there's so much here. As I said, I think it's one of the most profound poems in the book. Anything else for anyone to say about it?
I think what to me, I have personally experienced that till you give up your fear of death, you cannot truly live. You cannot touch the sun. You cannot fly, because it's the elephant in the room that nobody's talking about, but everybody's aware of. And subconsciously, we are all motivated with either trying to find a way to escape death or find a way to make death as painless as possible, try to avoid anything touching our outer body which will cause pain, because death is associated with pain, with separation, with anxiety, with not knowing. So there's so much to death, and it's the elephant in the room nobody talks about. If we can face death in the eye, we can truly live. And that used to be my problem. I used to look at my mom, and I still remember I was very young. I used to think of my mom and I said, Mom is, to me, my world is my mom. What if she dies tomorrow? And then my way of living life, and it has always since childhood been very useful, is face fear in the eyes. So I would start imagining every day, just to make myself cauterized to the fact that one day she may not be there and I won't be able to take it. I would every day slowly, like inoculation, like a vaccination, give myself a little feel of, okay, she's not there. What are you going to feel? Then I have to check out my feelings, and slowly, 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 I reconcile to the fact that maybe one day she won't be there. It won't be such a shock when it happens. Touch wood, nothing has happened, but I used to build myself up like that. And I think that it's only when you face your fears, and the ultimate fear is death, that you can truly fly and truly live. And like Vivekananda said, let's believe in something where death, even if you have to die for it, believe in something that you would be ready to die for. That's how much you must want something. And that's only when you can get, like they said, you can only get God when you truly, like one Swamiji said, one Shishya said, I want to see God. He says, well, you keep saying you want to see God, and I don't think you truly. He says, no, I truly want to see God. He says, how desperately do you want it? So basically, one day he said, I'll show you what you have to do to get God. And he took him to the Ganges and he drowned him. And this guy screamed for life. He says, this is the kind of desire you have to have for God. That just the way your life is clinging at the thought of death, that is how much you have to want God before you can get God. So basically, you have to, if you don't fear death, you can basically conquer anything.
Very well said. I was born when all I once feared I could love.
Shankara, based on what Jeffrey was saying and you too about the non-dual aspects, looking back at the line, I died 1,000 times before I died, I'm wondering too if that could also refer to samadhi, when you're in that space of meditation where you kind of die to your normal everyday routines and you are at least glimpsing something of the non-dual. If you treated that as a death, I died 1,000 times.
I think you're very accurate, but that would not be the non-dual samadhi. That would be the that would be the samadhi called savikalpa samadhi. That is the ecstasy where there is still the experienced, the wholeness. Everything else is pushed to the periphery. Everything else is pushed to the periphery. There is only the one. And yet, as if you're looking, just to use a clumsy metaphor, you're looking at a pie. There's a slice cut out of the pie, but not yet taken out of the pie. There's just that tiny little thin slice of separation. You're part of the whole, but not one with the whole entirely. This is this experience of the lower form of samadhi where there's still, but it is transformative and results in what Krishna Kali was pointing to and what was pointed to earlier by others, that you lose the fear of death because there is this experiential knowledge of the oneness. And it's in the Christian scriptures, it's referred to as seeing through a glass darkly. Anything else from anyone?
Yeah, Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
if I can share my recent experience with being near a person at the end of life. As you know, my mother-in-law passed away
Yes.
a few days ago, and she would have been 98 in August. She had a good life. What we noticed was towards the last few weeks of her life, she really wanted to go. The body was kind of holding on, but she would, like, for example, one day she, in her middle of the night, she would recite this poem, which is in Hindi, but translating it, basically this saint, Namdev, sings that he made the roti, and a dog took it away, and the Namdev went after the dog with a bowl of ghee, telling the dog, well, don't eat dry roti, please have some ghee with it. You and I are the same. You have the shawl of a dog and I have the shawl of a human. So basically there's no difference. And she had not said this poem at all for until now. All of a sudden, like in the middle of the night, Naveen was sleeping in the next room and he could hear the poem. So she had probably already connected. And then, of course, she fell, and then 2-3 days were difficult. She was in a lot of pain, and so the hospice people did give her medicines for pain, but she was still very restless, trying to reach and grasp. And so we thought that she was still in pain. And the nurse from hospice came, this was on her final day, and she was like an angel. I mean, she came and first thing she went, she kissed my mother-in-law on the forehead, caressed her hands, caressed her cheeks, and spent almost 20 minutes talking to her very calmly. And then she came and told us that what she's going through is not pain, it's agitation, because people are calling out to her, whoever dead relatives that they're calling out, and she wants to reach them, but she's not able to physically because the body is meant to preserve. So then she gave her, another medicine, and then after that, my mother-in-law pretty much slept. and the end was so painless, and we were fortunate to get a aide that night, was sitting with her. Like, she came whatever 10 o'clock, and I had just gone to bed, and Naveen was still awake. So the aide kind of realized that the end was coming, so she quickly came out of the door and called Naveen. So he went, and then he held her hand, and she literally took her last breath. She just kind of, like what he describes as, just the tongue kind of came out a little bit, and she just gave one breath out and done. No pain, no gurgling, no nothing. So it, thank God for the medicines, because the physical body was in pain. But once that was controlled, I think the death itself was painless. That's what I feel. I mean, I couldn't witness, because by the time I went into the room, it was over. But from listening to the nurse and listening to my husband, the end was very peaceful.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Swayam. Thank you for sharing those intimate moments with us. And yes, it's very interesting. There's lots of stuff being written now, books and videos being made, and so on, about the experience of ICU nurses and hospice people and so on, who are in the presence of people in the days before they die, and then when they actually die. And it's very instructive to hear and read what they have to say. Many stories just like the one that you told. And that's the reason that aide was able to tell you what he or she told you. I guess it was a she you mentioned. Because they'd experienced this many times before, that sometimes people are actually able to articulate what it is that they're agitated about. This is one of the things you find in these tales from hospice nurses and ICU nurses and so on. Sometimes they're able to say what it is they're reaching for, and why they feel so upset, because they can see it, but they can't. It's still through a glass darkly.
Yeah, she had been calling out to her mother, talking to her, seeing her, and she thought Naveen was her brother. All that had been going on for a few days. The other interesting thing about the night aid, that was the first time we had asked for a paid aid at night. And things were kind of going down the hill, but I said, no, we had promised her this shift, so let her come. So she came a little bit early. Then she said, don't worry, I'll hang around and come back, but can I see her before I go? So we said, sure. So she went to my mother-in-law's bedside and, waited for about 5 minutes, and then she left and said she'd come back later. Then I get a message from her boss asking, do you still want her to come? I said, yeah, sure. Later on, she told Naveen, that aide, that when she first went into my mother-in-law's room, she realized that she's not going to live beyond midnight. And she was supposed to come at 10. So she didn't know whether for 2 hours it was necessary. So that's why she had asked, do you still want me to come? And she was on, by 12:45, the last breath. Somewhere around that time was her last breath. So they had it narrowed down to that.
Well, they get very sensitive.
And it's very interesting what you said, Saragam, about the what we call terminal agitation, in that so often I worked as a hospice chaplain for several years. And so what we term the terminal agitation doesn't really happen right at the end. It's what you experience, that we don't know always what that agitation is about, but it happens to many, many people, and yet it's not necessarily. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's a blessing that it is not right at the end, that there is often peace that comes after that agitation, is what I'm trying to say, just part of the process. Yeah, so I'm glad it was so peaceful for your mother-in-law and for all of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we have just 1 minute left. I think what we'll do is, Jillian, if you could read The Moment's Depth, and we won't try to discuss it this evening, but we'll just highlight it as the one that we'll start with next week. But just so it will live with us for the week, if it's all right with everyone, we'll take a few moments and read that poem.
The moment's depth. The moment's depth is greater than that of the future. And from the fields of the past, what can you harvest again? Dried flowers I have from a meadow, I laid in with her and moved across her breasts. When I need love's scent, I touch them. A mine with jewels can be the past for the heart, but who goes to an old mine that only made you sad? I have seen a man walk on a high stretched rope, holding a long pole for balance. Memories and dreams can do that, be a great help. The soul does not understand the word seasons, and the petals on the sun can only be touched now. The beauty of dried flowers, how can they compare to him? Wow. Shall I read it one more time?
Please do, yes.
The moment's depth. The moment's depth is greater than that of the future. And from the fields of the past, what can you harvest again? Dried flowers I have from a meadow, I laid in with her and moved across her breasts. When I need love's scent, I touch them. A mine with jewels can be the past for the heart, but who goes to an old mine that only made you sad? I have seen a man walk on a high stretched rope, holding a long pole for balance. Memories and dreams can do that, be a great help. The soul does not understand the word seasons. The petals on the sun can only be touched now. The beauty of dried flowers, how can they compare to him?
Okay, so we'll leave
Wow.
it there. Yeah, once again, Rabia is Rabia is just an amazement. She is truly an amazement. And as she says, she can reach right through to us from that time to now. And I believe it's true. So, so good to have the five of you with us tonight. And so until next Monday, sometimes it feels like it's going to be a long time till next Monday. But it's so sweet to have been with you. Would anyone like to offer a closing thought? All right. Let me just say this then. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. May we go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the divine presence as our mother and father. So until next Monday, or until some of you will join us perhaps for the Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday classes. So good to have been with you this evening. This is always very sweet. Any final thought from anyone? All right, dears. Until next week.
Good night,
Jeffrey.
Shankara.
Good night, everyone.
So good to see you well.
Thank you,
Good
dear.
night.
Yes.
Good night.
And Jeffrey, I cannot say what a pleasure it is that you came and joined our group.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. It really has been. I really look forward to it every week.
All right, dear. Well, we look forward to seeing you. So, and all the rest of you, you know how I feel about you. We spend time together in other contexts. So,
Bye, everyone. Good night.
good night.
Good
Good
night.
night. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.